an Indian perspective on how Modi and Trump will work together. Joining us is the peerless Samir Saran, the president of the ORF. And I just spoke with him. Listen into this. Samir Saran, very quickly, your take on the US election, and then I really want to get into a little bit of how the India-US trade relationship, as well as, of course, the alliance, the strategic partnership is going to evolve under Trump. But your quick take on the election.
Rahul, thank you for having me. And I'm as in some sense astounded by some of the numbers that are coming out. People are projecting him to win the popular vote. It's not an electoral college victory. It is a popular vote victory as well. And then you're talking about the magnitude of the victory being unprecedented. You know, I was reading a report right now which suggests that this could be as big as probably Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, or George Bush, who was a wartime president in 2004. So this is a big victory for Donald Trump. This is not the number game. This is not, in some sense, a fixed election results that people were accusing him of in 2016. He's beaten them fair and square. And he's beaten them across demographics. And I think your previous speaker got it right. While the Democrats were trying to herd people into identity classes, Donald Trump has broken those barriers and has appealed to a much wider cross-section on, I think, essentially three vulnerabilities. The first, of course, is immigration. It was palpable from California to New York to the heartland of America. Immigration was an issue, and if you did not hear and see it, then you were blind. Inflation was hurting, and anyone who travels to the US on an annual pilgrimage knows they pay much more every year for the same, confectionaries that they procure from the same store each year. And you know that, Rahul, you would have experienced it yourself.
That's right.
And the third, of course, is what I call the creation of a whole Warcraft, which basically allowed men to be in women's bathrooms and be in women's boxing rings. And I think the whole the dislocation of American culture, mainstream culture, through this whole in many ways re-engineering of identity, gender, and place, was also not something that perhaps could pass muster the majority this time. And in many ways, Donald Trump probably picked up these three big issues, ran with them, and you could see the results. And look, there'll be reams of scientific research papers written on these books, but probably as well on the comeback kid, because this is unprecedented. You know, he was facing a organized machinery that reminded us of feeble democracies in emerging and developing countries, where you have police cases filed against an opposition, you have assassination attempts, you have state-appointed prosecutors going after them, you have judges appointed by a political party, arraigning him. So you saw, a third world election being fought, in a sense, in the oldest democracy of the world this time. And to be fair, it does no credit to the US.
I heard that before. I heard this last part of what you said before, ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections also, the unequal level playing field, etc., etc. Very interesting take. But Samir Saran, I want to ask you.
I mean, look here, yes, he was nearly barred from even being on the field. Forget about an unlevel playing field.
Yeah.
And they talk about Godi media. Oh my God, Godi media has been redefined by American mainstream media. They were standing next to the candidate on the bully pulpit and endorsing them.
Yeah.
There was no difference between a party worker and an editor-in-chief of a big broadcast network. That's what was happening in the US this time. And yet they will come out with a report on and give us certificates of which media is free, which media is not free. I think what the State Department must do is take their budget where they study what is happening around democracies around the world, and now study themselves for the next 4 years, and come every year with an improvement grade to themselves, that we have fixed this and we have now wanting to focus on the next one. I think, anyways, this is not the time for that, but congratulations to POTUS, number 47. And I think it has been a remarkable victory. And look, we do well with all presidents. So we don't have a skin in the game. We Americans have generally, every American presidency has only strengthened the relationship. Biden contributed a lot He really took the relationship forward. Trump, in his previous avatar, expanded it to in new geographies. The Indo-Pacific as the Quad and the Indo-Pacific as it operates today was courtesy Donald Trump. So we have benefited from a string of American presidencies that have paid special attention to China. This one is not going to be any different. We will have to negotiate and renegotiate with the new Oval Office. There will be issues around trade and tariff and his in some sense pet peeve on preventing people from taking free rides, on American benevolence, which is fair. But he's also someone who's willing to do a good deal. And in some sense, if we are nimble, agile, and alert, there would be enough opportunities for India to architect a very bright common future together.
Now, it is interesting because there was, over the last year and a half, perhaps, with the Biden-Harris team, a big brotherly sort of condescension on human rights and, a certain paternalism that India was beginning to sort of feel a little uncomfortable with. And you saw that play out in an indelicate manner, let's put it like that, over the last 6 months, and quite publicly so. We even had, just before the Prime Minister visited the United States, a delegation of Sikh separatists meeting certain officials in the White House, in fact, on the eve of the visit of the Prime Minister. And that obviously would have left a bitter taste in anyone's mouth. There was summons to some of our top officials in government. Now, all of that, do you think that's going to sort of abate? Or will it just die out a natural death without the imprimatur of the Trump administration?
Rahul, you were, you have raised an important question, and I think it's important to tell all our compatriots in India that this is a US election which has decided the president of the United States, not the president of India.
Yeah.
We have our prime minister who leads us, and they have elected their own president. He will serve American interests and American idiosyncrasies as well. Certain American idiosyncrasies transcend the political divides, and they are not going to disappear. Some are personality driven, and in that sense, Democrats are more prone to be a little more paternalistic and patronizing in engaging with some other parts of the world, and Republicans are less. Although Republicans would be equally irritating when it comes to seeking economic and trade levelizations. So in some sense, they come with their idiosyncrasies. Some of it is personality driven, but a large part of it is institutional. So I suspect that it might be more elegant, that same issue that you were referring to, Rahul, it might be more elegant going ahead. It's not going to disappear. And those are still going to persist, and we will have to deal with them as partners. And by the way, to be fair, and I was saying this to someone in Canberra, where I am right now for the Raisina Down Under, I was just telling our Australian counterparts that look, what we have done well in the last 10 years is that we give back as good as we get. So in some sense, we don't hold back. If you speak to American commentators, they will tell you that Indians are highly prickly, or Indians are quite brash, as they call us these days, because that was a prerogative for American commentators. We are not supposed to have those views and have a viewpoint on their democracy while they should have on ours, right? So my point here is that we have a fairly equal conversation now, and we can handle these pinpricks. The substance is not likely to be altered. The strategic substance, the security partnerships, the defense partnerships, they are likely to continue to be strengthened in the days ahead. And the trade and economic partnerships, like in every era, will be reset and remodeled so that both of us benefit. But Rahul, the inelegance that was in display might be not on the table anymore.
Okay, very quickly, Mr. Saran, I know you probably have to get on with your day. Just wanted to ask you this. It's very important because there's been an emphasis from the Trump campaign on tariffs, on open trade borders, so to speak. And India, of course, enjoys its greatest export destination is the United States. Can that actually have an impact going forward? Is Trump going to push that agenda, and how does India react to this?
Look, even in the previous presidency, he had that agenda. And kudos to our Prime Minister and Foreign Minister for having managed that particular mood that was prevalent even then. And by the way, he threatened us a few times even in his first term about imposing tariffs and India-specific action.
That's right.
I think what we have to do in the days ahead is to prevent any India specific action. If there is a general tariff that he seeks to introduce across a class of countries, I think we can navigate that and we can actually benefit from that. And we can seek special carve outs based on our special relationship. Could be around the joint manufacturing complexes which benefit American companies, for example, the Apple production in India or defense production in India or some other such sectors where there is a clear interest for both corporations, for the two different countries and their private sector to benefit from. So I think that would be fine. But an India specific tariff is something that we have to make sure does not ever come to fruition. And in fact, if we are able to do that, and which I'm quite confident we will be able to, I think the rest is a national prerogative. We have industrial policies, they have industrial policies. We have a Make in India that we promote so aggressively and with great pride. They have a Make America Great Again. The IRA or the Make America Great Again is basically an industrial policy of America to benefit their own corporations. We will have to negotiate. So it's not going to be easy, but at least with him, it's simpler. We know what he wants. There is a degree of deal making which is quite apparent in the design stage itself that we can actually seek to further.
And since you have a global view, do you think that Trump is going to intercede and perhaps end wars? Most importantly, the Ukraine war on the continent and, of course, in our immediate neighborhood in West Asia?
Look, I think there are three issues here when you look at a global scan. I think the most important relationship that will face some headwinds will be the transatlantic partnership. The oldest and strongest relationship is going to be under stress. That's the European American relationship. And we'll have to see what the fallout of that could be. There could be a pulling back of the EU from the Atlantic relationship. In which case, what does EU do as its options? Does it start cozying up to China? Does it start finding alternative trading partners like us or in other parts of Asia and Africa? We'll have to see how Europe readjusts to this new development. Or it could be that Trump 2.0 actually is going to do a new deal with Europe, where having seen the new European appetite for investing in defense budgets, there could be a possibility that he might change his mind on NATO and change his mind on the utility of the transatlantic arrangement. So I think the transatlantic partnership is perhaps the first one that I would point out. The second, of course, is the Middle East. And here I think there are two big questions in my mind. One, because of this presidency, is the Gaza operation going to now be subsumed into a larger Iran-Israel dynamic? And I think that is something that we should keep a lookout for, because I know you know Donald Trump has been speaking about Iran during his campaign as well, and I have a feeling that this could very well become a Iran-centered conflict rather than the one that deals with Hamas and the Palestinians and the Gaza Strip. So I think that's the second area that we need to watch. And you'll have to see this in the context of the fact that he's also the architect of the Abraham Accords, which seeks a Middle East that is at peace. And in some sense, Iranian peace with Saudi Arabia and with others embellishes the peace arrangement that had been architected by him. So he has to balance his friend Netanyahu's desire for a tactical response versus the larger objective of a peaceful Middle East, which can be conducive for American businesses and American economic growth. So I think that's the second area we should watch out for. The third, of course, is the Indo-Pacific and China, and of course the Quad. And here I think there is going to be a degree of continuity, because basically the Trump policies were adopted by Biden, and I believe the Biden policies are going to be, in many ways, be carried forward with Trump's own flavor added to it the second time around. So in that sense, I see in the third region a greater degree of certainty than in the other two regions, which are the Middle East and the European relationship.
Are you surprised that the Sensex is sort of rocketing up and also, of course, the Dow futures?
No, I'm not surprised. So I'm not surprised at all. Look, he ran on taxation, on lower taxes, right? And the other one was running on higher taxes. So I think his presidency might actually now give a new lease of life to the stock exchanges that were struggling over the past few weeks in some sense.